The Florida Gators pass rush in 2025 is going to be even better than 2024.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free reviews on the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Thursday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by TurboTax. If you're ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed, head on over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. And like I said, the Florida Gators pass rush in 2025 is going to be better than the Florida Gators pass rush in 2024. And I don't say that to say that the Florida Gators pass rush is going to be the greatest thing you've ever seen. But I say that for one big reason, or two big reasons, I guess we'll say. One, I think the pass rush in 2025 is actually going to be really good, which I will also say, just to revisit this, because I got this comment a couple weeks ago where someone brought up like Prince Umanmielen, and they were like, oh, well, you said the pass rush would be worse when he left. I just want to make this abundantly clear. I said that while you lost him, and he's a tremendous pass rusher, your pass rush as a unit would be better. And so I was right there. I want to throw that one out there. Okay. But also, I just think that this pass rush, I think this pass rush in 2025 is going to be really good. I think that the pass rush in 2024 was not as good as many of us would like to remember it. Okay. And I say that because I'm talking about the pass rush over the course of an entire season. Okay, which we'll talk about why things happened and how they played out later on. That's fine. I have no problem acknowledging that it's not just a cut and dry thing, right? But I'm talking about the pass rush as an entire season, not just those final 3 regular season games where they just turned up on everybody, right? And in terms of how many pressures the pass rush got in 2024, they got 28 pressures against LSU. They got 25 pressures against Ole Miss. And they got 30 pressures against Florida State. Okay? So 28, 25, and 30 is 83. 83 pressures came in that 3-game stretch. I am, in the interest of full disclosure, I am removing Samford and Tulane from the sample size here. And the reasoning for that is that, one, neither of those programs are Power 4 programs. Okay? Samford is FCS, so it's not a true measure of whether or not you have a good or bad pass rush. And if you do feel that way, I think you're just looking for inflated stats. So Samford's FCS, not going to count them. Like if Florida goes off against Long Island, I'm not going to go, oh, well, look at this national championship team right now. That's silly. For Tulane, I'm also removing it just because there were so many players out on both sides. It wasn't, starters versus starters, and it wasn't production versus production. So I removed those games. So you had 83 pressures in the other 11 games for Florida. 83 pressures in 3 games, and there were another 11 games, okay? 42% of Florida's pressures came in those final 3 regular season games. 42% of them. Okay? That means the other 100-something came over the course of the season, which in those other 8 games is what, 11, 12 pressures per game when you were putting up 28 versus LSU, 25 versus Ole Miss, 30 versus Florida State. That's what I'm saying when I say that I'm talking about over the course of the season, the Florida Gators pass rush is going to be better. Because the Florida Gators pass rush for large portions of 2024 were not good. Was not good. Right? Like the pass rush, again, insanely good at times. Again, 28 versus LSU, 25 versus Ole Miss, 30 versus Florida State. They ended with like 14 against Tennessee. But even then, they had a dominant stretch. And then outside of that stretch, outside of that burst, pass rush was mostly quiet. There was that stretch where it was like, I think Jaden Robinson had a sack and Tyreek Sapp had a sack. Caleb Banks, like they were all getting home for a stretch of time. And then that changed when Tennessee made adjustments. Texas A&M, 7 pressures. Part of that is because Texas A&M didn't throw the ball in the fourth quarter. But also part of the reason that Texas A&M was allowed to do that is because when they did throw the ball previously, your pass rush didn't do anything and they built up a lead and then just ran the ball out. So I'm not saying that this pass rush from 2024 wasn't as good as, or wasn't good. I am saying it wasn't as good as many Florida Gators fans would like for it to seem, or how we remember it. And by we, I am including myself in that, right? Because it's not just a matter of recency bias. It's not just a matter of, well, the most recent thing we've seen, because again, football, sports is a what have you done for me lately kind of industry. But it's me saying that you had that dominant stretch, and that's how a lot of us remember it. But realistically, there were quite a few games where we watched and we went, they're just not hitting home. You didn't think that against LSU, Ole Miss, or Florida State. There weren't even any stretches where they went quiet. But every other game, it felt like there were some stretches. Texas, they had like 7 or 9 pressures against Texas, 7 against Texas A&M. Like, part of that, sure, was because of depth and context matters, right? Texas, you had a very banged up secondary. That just meant that Texas could throw the ball quickly, not have to worry about your pass rush. Made sense. Georgia, you had a couple stretches, but for the most part, you weren't hitting home a ton and you weren't genuinely getting in Carson Beck's face. And against Georgia, he was throwing picks just on his own. But I do think it's important to acknowledge the context of everything. All right. Players changed. Some players just developed throughout the season, notably, like Caleb Banks, who we'll talk about in a couple minutes. But I do think that this Florida Gators pass rush in 2025 is going to be, I would venture to say, considerably improved, right? Sacks may not go up a ton, but I do think that pressures will see a pretty significant jump. And I think that a good pass rush will mask any concerns that people may have in a secondary. Not any, but it'll help mask concerns in a secondary. Because, you know, when we talk about these NFL teams, because we're talking NFL for a second, and we talk about, you know, edge rusher or corner, what's more valuable? Edge rushers are getting paid more, right? Because one good edge rusher or one good pass rusher can completely change a pass rush. One good corner, they'll just throw to the other side, right? So I do think that I'm emphasizing the pass rush here because I think the pass rush, for any concerns about the secondary, I think the pass rush answers that, right? In 2024, it's not like the secondary all of a sudden got so much better at making plays. It's that the pass rush helped them get there. Make quarterbacks make mistakes, make them rush throws, whatever it may be. So I do think that emphasizing the pass rush here is huge. I think Gerald Chapman's going to do a fantastic job. He's a fantastic position coach. But I do think that the personnel on the roster is also getting better in 2025. We'll talk about that when we get back with Locked On Gators. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege, no spaces, for half off of your first year with monarchmoney.com. If you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year, because I don't know if you know this, 3 months from full-blown summer. Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto, which I've said this before. I carb cycle. So on days where I work out, consume a ton of carbs and protein. Days I don't work out, keto. Gotta keep it fresh, right? Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And we're back talking about how this Florida Gators pass rush is going to get better in 2025. Again, I'm not saying that it was bad in 2024. I think it was very good in 2024. I just don't think that it was this elite of all elite pass rushes that we've ever seen at the University of Florida, right? I think it was a really good pass rush, but it was far from perfect, right? It was one where a lot of production came at the back stretch, and had the pass rush been more consistent, then maybe we'd be talking about a defense that was even 2 or 3 points per game better, which is probably another win or two. Caleb Banks is back for 2025. And not possibly express how important that is for the pass rush, because he was the guy that when he started going off, that's when everything opened up. Because when the interior pass rusher starts going, there's 2 main points, right? One, quickest line from point A to point B, or quickest route from point A to point B, is a straight line. D tackle to QB. Straight line, not bending around any offensive tackles, none of that. So, quickest way from point A to point B, straight line. That's one. 2, when an interior pass rusher starts generating pressure on his own, you especially have to give extra attention to him, partially because of that disruption to the quarterback. Whether it's sacking the quarterback, just getting in his face, you can prevent him from stepping up into the pocket and delivering, from even just stepping into a throw and delivering. When you get that added emphasis, that added protection to that interior defensive lineman, then the edge rushers really get to just pin their ears back and go rush the quarterback. That's it. George Gumbs gets to just pin his ears back and say, all right, I'm going around this offensive tackle, and there's not going to be anybody there to stop me. I don't have to worry about a guard sliding over and protecting, none of that, because they're all focused on Caleb. And when they weren't focused on Caleb, when they were focused on Caleb, that helped open things up for Cam Jackson as well. Cam Jackson had his best pass rushing year ever. I know that he had more pressures in a year with Memphis. I don't care. We're talking about best pass rushing year in terms of look at your production, look at your film, and look at the level of competition you did it against. That was one of the best things for Florida in 2024, is that their strength of schedule was so crazy in 2024 that all the draft prospects, they got to go up genuinely week in, week out against the best players in the country. They put out, if you put out even good film, that looks great comparatively because you're going up against some elite talent. Caleb Banks coming back, he is someone that he needs to be more consistent, right? He's someone that I know a lot of people towards the end of the season, and even now at this point, just a few months after the season, are still talking about some of the tweets that came out towards the end of the season that were like, oh, Caleb Banks could be a first-round pick right now. Caleb Banks could be an early second-round pick right now, top 40 player. Here's the thing. That wasn't happening, okay? And that's not a knock on him. That's whoever said that put out an unrealistic expectation, because the fact of the matter is that Caleb Banks was really productive for 3 games, and outside of that wasn't so productive. 65.4% of Caleb Banks' pressures came from that same sample size as the team stats in the first segment. So 65.4% of Caleb Banks' pressures came from those final 3 regular season games of the 11 games that we're including in the sample size. 2/3 of your pressures came in less than a quarter of the games or a quarter of the games. That's it. That means you were relatively unproductive as a pass rusher for the remainder of the time. Part of it also, by the way, is that Caleb Banks started staying on the field more. And it felt kind of like he was someone that he got into a rhythm and he just became a monster at that point. So I do think that that's part of it. I do think that we'll see him play a lot this year. But Caleb Banks needs to be more consistent. I don't need him to be playing at his peak that he played at, right? I don't think it's realistic to say, hey, every week you need to be playing the absolute best football. Because it's just not how things work, especially in college. They're way more volatile. But Caleb Banks is someone that was especially productive in those final 3 regular season games and not so productive in the rest of the schedule there. Also, Tyreek Sapp. He's back for another year, his last year, but 57.1 of his pressures came in that same sample size. You get where I'm going here? So Tyreek Sapp, again, most of their pressures came from that same sample size. LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. Where this pass rush that was incredible, the elite of the elite in that stretch, need that to be more consistent. And of course, again, all of these go hand in hand, right? Caleb Banks was the one that started going off, and then it was a domino effect, right? Then Tyreek Sapp gets to cook. Then George Gumbs gets to cook. Then Cam Jackson gets to cook. That's how it went. It all stemmed from Caleb Banks going off. But that opened up everything, which is why you're going to see that production. However, there was one guy that was, although not the best pass rusher, I think, in terms of skill set, not the best pass rusher in terms of technique, I still think that's Caleb Banks. But George Gumbs was the most consistently productive pass rusher. Okay. And part of that's just because he's a twitched up freak athlete off the edge. 39.1% of his pressures came in that same sample size. So basically, a little bit more than a third of the pressures came in less than a third of the game. That's not that bad, again, when you proportion it out there. So George Gumbs, not the best pass rusher, but the most consistently productive pass rusher. He's the guy where you could say, hey, consistently, he's getting you 2-3 pressures. That's it. That's how it's going. Now, when we talk about the personnel improving for 2025, which we'll talk about the scheme to wrap up the show next, but when we talk about the personnel improving in 2025, Cam Jackson is gone. And again, while Cam Jackson just had his best year as a pass rusher, 1, he still wasn't very good at it, and 2, he still wasn't super productive there. Jamari Lyons should be healthy, and Jamari Lyons, just being a better athlete than Cam Jackson, Jamari Lyons should be more productive there. Should be able to generate more pressure from the interior. DeAndre Robinson should also be better there. I don't know about Mekhi Boyero, but DeAndre Robinson should also be better there. Jamari Lyons coming in. And then also when you look at the edge room, Jack Pyburn is gone. TJ Searcy is gone. They were both very good run defenders. I will not take that away from them. But they brought basically nothing to the table in terms of pass rush production. Nothing. Cam James, LJ McCray, they should both be able to contribute. Maybe they'll be worse run defenders. I don't think that they'll be worse pass rushers just because I think they're both better athletes than Pyburn and Searcy. And I think that they're both just, again, better pass rushers in terms of the physical tools that they bring. They're actual hand fighting and working. It's not just I'm going to plow my body into the offensive tackle's body and we're going to figure it out. Not how it works there. We are going to talk about how this Florida Gators scheme in 2025 can help the pass rush be even better again this year when we get back with Locked On Gators. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with an expert that can help you do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. Love being able to focus on yourself. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the money back. We get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worrying. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thanks for Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free, whether it's the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's show, we're talking about how this Florida Gators scheme in 2025 will help make the pass rush in 2025 be better than 2024. And I will say that I think towards the end of the season, scheme-wise, they kind of found their sweet spot, right? Scheme-wise, because, again, one of the main reasons that this defense got better toward the end of 2024 is, again, one of the main reasons, not the only reason, not the most important reason, but one of the main reasons that they got better was finding what worked for them defensively. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to be a lot more aggressive. That wasn't it. It was like, hey, we're just going to blitz the hell out of everybody. No, they weren't the Minnesota Vikings, okay? What they did do was they got smarter. They kind of went, hey, what's been working for us? What hasn't been working for us? How do we do more of that, right? More too high coverage. Less giving up the deep shots. Because, again, we talked about this last week or something like that. Offenses now and quarterbacks now, they tend to read high to low. They're looking for the deep shot. They're looking at the high part of the field, and they're working their way down to the easier completions. The less... more efficient in terms of completion percentage, but less EPA per play, less analytic bang for your buck there. Because that's really what it is, right? Similar to how basketball is, hey, layups and catch and shoot threes. Football, bombs, easy completions underneath. That's what we're looking for. So they figured, hey, we'll take those away. And then when we kind of prioritize that, taking away the top, by the time quarterbacks read to the bottom, we should be getting a pressure. We should be getting a sack. We should be in their face. That's what Florida figured out worked for them in 2024. Took them too long to figure it out. So I will say that. Took them too long to figure that out. They should have figured it out much sooner, but they figured it out eventually. Now that they know what they're doing and now that they know what works for them, I would imagine we see more of the same from start to finish, but probably a bit of an expansion, we'll say, right? Probably a bit of a, hey, we need to add something to our defense. We need to add these things to it, and we will see that. I do think that one of the things that you will see get added more to it is the blitzing, right? I don't think that they're going to become this crazy blitzing defense. I'm not saying that. Hell, their blitz rate might not even go up overall on the year. Actually, their blitz rate might go down overall on the year because their blitz rate from the first half, we'll say, to the second half went down. If they keep that same number from the second half throughout this whole season, it'll be lower overall than it was in 2024. So blitz rate might go down. I do think that they'll be a lot more effective there in 2025. First off, Shamar James, no issue with what he did as a blitzer last year. But I do think that Pup Howard, Jaden Robinson, and Miles Graham would all be better blitzers from the linebacker spot than Shamar James. Again, not saying that he's bad at it, because I don't think he's bad at it at all. I just think that Pup can get more nitty-gritty in the middle when he blitzes. I think Jaden Robinson, look at Jaden Robinson when he was blitzing in 2024, and he was far more effective than Shamar James was on half as many pass rush attempts. In fact, Jaden Robinson ended with 4 sacks on Pro Football Focus I'm using, which doesn't count half sacks. It's if you get a half sack, that counts as a sack. So Jaden Robinson, 4 sacks on 30 pass rushes. Shamar James, 2 sacks on 60 pass rushes. Jaden Robinson had more boom plays, twice as many boom plays on half as many attempts, opportunities, whatever you want to call them. So that's one of the reasons they're like, okay, Jaden Robinson should be a better blitzer than Shamar James. And Miles Graham, I am convinced, and I've been saying this since high school, I am convinced he would be an elite blitzer from the off-ball linebacker spot. His first step is just insane. When he's in high school, he had like the linebacker, running back tendencies there. Like he could do all that. His first step is crazy. That was one of the favorite things about Gerard Davis about a decade ago at this point. That was one of my favorite things. That was one of the first scouting report I ever wrote, which, just a quick side note, first scouting report I ever wrote, I gave 3 draft fits for him. Said I thought he'd be a first round pick. Gave him 3 draft fits. It was the Lions, the Giants, and I think the Ravens at the time. I think the Ravens were the last one. But I just remember the Lions took him right before the Giants. And I was stoked about it, but I was also like, wow, I'm so good at this. Which, yeah. Things have changed, right? We'll say that. But that's just quick side note. But then also, looking at someone like Sharif Denson's usage, and I say this again because I don't know Aaron Gates' status. We've been told that he's ahead of schedule, but I don't know exactly what that means for his recovery. But Sharif Denson's usage, he was incredibly effective as a pass rusher last year, incredibly effective as a blitzer. I would expect to see more of that. And I mentioned this to the Insider program the other day, which if you want to join, the link's in the description below, or you can go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGators. But Gregory Smith III has been working out a little bit at star. He's got the size and athleticism to play any spot in the secondary. He's got the size and athleticism to play any role you may need for him. If you can unlock his blitzing potential, he can be a freak productive player there. So that could be something if they figure it out. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators and Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work for New York Giants on SI, and I will see you all next time.